there are also some big swing opportunities that could have a huge impact. And I think like AI, especially from like a workflow perspective, I think has a tremendous potential upside.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about. Wait!
Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys. Welcome to Higher Ed Pulse, your Monday morning energizer covering insights and trends in higher ed marketing and enrollment. I'm Mallory Wilsey, bringing over 15 years of edtech and marketing expertise to your earbuds.
And I'm Seth Odell, joining the Pulse with my own adventures from leading marketing at top universities to founding Kanahoma, one of the industry's fastest growing digital marketing agencies.
Each week, we bring you the kind of insider insights you typically only find over cocktails with your pals at a conference.
It's fast, it's fun, and it's designed for you, the busy higher ed professional.
You're not just listening to another podcast.
You're checking the pulse of higher education.
Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher ed professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. So Enrollify listeners know we recently hired a new marketing manager for Enrollify. Her name is Erin Fields, and she hasn't even been here for a full month. And she's already making such a big impact. And I just have to shout her out. She's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so great. New people can be just the absolute best. I'm so glad here. Plus, her providing value early is great. There's a concept called the J curve, which is that oftentimes when you hire new people, you can become less productive until they get fully settled, and then they become more productive and you get up. So a lot of times the faster the J curve, I think the more it shows just how talented somebody is and how much value they're going to provide.
Absolutely. She had so many early wins in her first couple weeks. We were relaunching that website and she just dove right in. So Erin, I know you probably are listening, and a huge shout out to you. But Seth, I got to ask you a question because I'm just coming off of all of these interviews for that role. And over my entire career, it has been shocking to me how few people follow up an interview with a thank you note, whether that's a LinkedIn message or an email or whatnot. I think this is not an exact statistic by any means, but as I think about the last maybe 5 or 6 roles I've hired for, I feel like I've gotten less than 5 thank you notes after those interviews.
Oh, I've probably only gotten maybe 5 in my whole career, and I've handled hiring for probably at this point 75 people, maybe almost 100. The physical thank you note is definitely a relic of the past. There are only very few people I think that keep that alive and well. I think it lands, getting stuff in the mail, it lands. I will say I am a stickler for thank you follow-ups. I don't like them on LinkedIn. It feels too casual. I mean, if you want to send a paper one, cool. I don't need that. I do at least need an email. What I want, the more than the thank you, is the recap a little bit. Thanks for the conversation, but then tell me where you're left off, or share some interesting information, or follow up with some links to some things that we chatted about. I love that. I mentioned this project I did. Here's a link to it. To me, that level of follow-up allows the conversation to continue, which I really love. So I'm a big fan of the thank you follow-up. I'm okay with email, but I don't know. What about you? You get more paper ones than me, so maybe that's a good thing.
No, actually, I never get paper ones. So sorry if that was confusing, but I'm saying I have only gotten maybe 5 emails in the last 5 or 6 roles.
Oh, whoa. Okay, that's different. Yeah, that would kind of rub me the wrong way a little bit, or worry me that I don't know, maybe you read too much into it, but I'd worry that, that's maybe not the best sign.
I think it's a bad look. I've never, it's never come down. The decision has never come down to, okay, well, this person sent a thank you note, so I'm hiring them. But it has caused us to sway in one direction or another in kind of those middle rounds. And I just get so irked when I don't get a thank you note. I'm going to be honest. I'm we're giving each other all of this time. We've just come off of this great conversation. Like you said, there's some low-hanging fruit. You've mentioned a project. You've noted some book you've read. That is low-hanging fruit for a thank you note. Take the 30 seconds because you're going to stand out. You are going to stand out if you do that and you do it well.
Yeah. Totally agree. I think it's a great thing for people to remember to do. I think it only helps.
All right. Well, this has been like burning on my brain. So I was like, I have to like talk to you about this and see if I'm just crazy. Yes. All right. So today's episode, a couple weeks ago, I posted on LinkedIn a little call to action for my followers to let us know what they would like us to talk about in future Pulse episodes. You know, headed into the summer, we had a few ideas. We were like, let's just ask people. We're 20 episodes in at this point. I'm sure there's some stuff they just want to hear us sound off on. And we got incredible ideas. So actually this week and next week's episodes are going to be inspired by the input that we received on that post. And this week, Kin Sejpal, who you are all familiar with, she has been hosting Pulse Check series on Enrollify throughout this year. She had an incredible idea. She said, we in higher ed are preparing for the next 6 months and beyond. And there's been a lot of change and turmoil already this year. This year is asking so much of us, from the political climate to the FAFSA delays to the emphasis of the enrollment cliff and so much more. And so she said, right, when should we be speaking or not speaking, acting or not acting, right? And our reputation needs to be elevated but protected. And yet all of these things are happening, but budgets are still being cut and resources are more stretched than ever before. So how can we do more with less? And she really wants us to hone in on things that are actionable for the back half of the year.
Oh, yeah.
Seth, what do you think?
I'm ready for that. So I love the topic. I will say that we have multiple partners at Kanahoma that are growing year over year from total enrollment and still seeing a reduction in budget. And I will say that that's one of the biggest concerns. Like, one of the signs of a growing organization is that your marketing spend represents a percentage of your total gross revenue, meaning that like a percentage of revenue gets allocated to marketing. It's scary to see organizations that are growing from a student perspective that are then still shrinking marketing, which to me shows that there's still something wrong with the business model, because like, why are we still shrinking operationally? But needless to say, a lot of people are finding themselves in that situation. And so that question of doing more with less is super real. So I'm ready to tackle this. I'm ready to get super in the weeds. I have 3 kind of buckets. Are you cool if I hit bucket 1 and then we can go from there?
Please, Seth, take us away.
Okay, so the first bucket on doing more with less to me is a concept that I always call, I say that we build from the bottom of the funnel up. So most of us are familiar, obviously, with the marketing funnel, which upper funnel is like awareness, and the middle of the funnel is consideration, and the lower funnel is action. And there's some combination of those. But the idea is if you're trying to drive more with less, you should not build your marketing at the top of the funnel. You should build it at the bottom of the funnel. And what I mean by that is the first question is like, what can we do to increase the conversion rate of inquiries and applications that we already have? So the first thing you should do is an immense amount of effort around nurturing and understanding how you actually work with folks that have expressed existing interest. One tactical tip that I always share is personalized plain text emails. That's always the one I go to. I think I've mentioned it here on the pod before, but like, ditch your design, ditch that the emails coming from marketing. Nobody wants emails from a brand. Send it from a person, make it look like it's real, and write the copy very casually. The one that I always go to is basically a push email to existing apps that didn't register that says something along the lines of, I was recently reviewing your file and I noticed that you applied but never ended up registering. I want to make sure my team followed up with you about your admission to the institution. And you send it from something like, oh, the person feels bad. They're like, oh, you did tell me I was in. I just ghosted you. And then like you get like a 50, 60, 70% open rate and a 20, 30% response rate. So that's the first one. When you move up from existing leads, you then get into the website. So website and CRO, conversion rate optimization, is huge. Make sure you have a program finder on your homepage, which is that like, what is the click path for folks to get to academic information and then express interest? It's extremely important at the graduate level and the online level, but it's increasingly important even at the traditional undergrad. And so like start at your homepage, figure out how fast it loads, and then look at click paths, which is like how many clicks it takes to get to key action. So if you're really pushing campus visits, how many clicks does it take to the homepage? And do you know that answer? And then just remove clicks. You remove clicks, you increase conversion. And then finally, when you move upper funnel even from there into marketing, the number one rule of thumb is you should spend more in search and spend less in social. Generally speaking, paid search is always going to be the highest intent because it's people actively shopping, versus social, which is more passive. It's people that may or may not have expressed an interest in some form to the ad platform, and the ad platform like a Facebook might know that, but they're not actively shopping. They're trying to browse and kind of distract themselves. And so improve your nurture, improve your website, and invest more in search and social. Those are examples of building from the bottom of the funnel up. When you don't have a lot of time, start at the bottom because people are a lot closer to enrolling. So that'd be my first few recommendations.
Well, and some advice that you gave a few weeks back, and this is something that actually, like, we do this with Element 451 marketing and digital ad spend. You noted that people search for problems, right? They're not searching for your program. They are searching for the problem that they're facing or the thing that they're trying to solve. And so what's your advice if spending in search, not social, is one of these, tenants in this bucket? How can we make sure that we're spending in the right way in search?
Yeah, I think so. The first thing in search is obviously to always focus on branded paid search, which has a ceiling of people searching for you. And then the next is to look into non-branded paid search. And then within non-brand, there are a series of buckets. There are programs, which, as we mentioned, is very expensive and not a lot of people searching for it. And then you work your way up. To me, there is like a middle ground where people are searching, like they are looking for a program but don't know what it is. So people search for things all the times, like, is a graduate degree worth it? Best business degrees, like how to advance your career and make more money in a certain field. Then you get way upper funnel in terms that are oftentimes better benefited by SEO, which is people that are looking for like how to do something, like how to become a teacher. Oftentimes is great SEO content. And so that's an example where I would look at that in tiers of like, they're looking for a program. They're kind of like circling a bucket of programs. We call that area of study. And then finally, like they're truly searching for problems. But the beauty I would say is that like, just go pour money on the fires that are already burning. So like this hits my second category was best practices. And at least the one that I'll share right now is you want to let your winners ride. So the simplest thing on paid search I would say is whoever's managing your paid search, go to them and say, if I immediately had to cut 20% of your budget, what would you turn off? And they say, okay. And if I immediately gave you 20% more budget, what would you immediately increase? And the answers almost always show you that there is it's like the Pareto principle. 20% of your investment drives 80% of your results. There's always a series of campaigns that are performing better. And so, the mistake we make is we think incremental marketing spend should mean more of things. But a lot of times it's just do more of the same thing. Don't do more different. Just do more of the same. And so like in a case where your budget is shrinking, like I would just literally like cut the fringe and like maintain the core. And oftentimes you can reduce your spend by 10% and see almost no impact on performance.
What else falls into this best practice bucket?
So second one is increase your working dollars. So there's a common phrase in marketing or a common term called working dollars, which is that you have your total marketing budget. Let's say your budget's $1 million. That might pay for your team, it might pay for your agency, and it might pay for media. And so in that case, maybe you say like half of our money goes into the market of $500,000 is working dollars. That means it's like buying media. So question is, how do you increase your working dollars? If you can increase your working dollars while keeping your budget flat, what you end up actually being able to do is drive more performance. And so you can do that through reduced agency fees, centralizing your agencies. You can do that by reducing external contractor costs, leaving open positions open longer. But the biggest thing is increase your working dollars because that is actually what drives performance, not increasing your overall budget. And then the other one is just give haircuts everywhere. Like call up your agencies and ask for a discount, like literally trim every budget across the board 3 to 4%. Like, generally speaking, people can find that in a lot of different budgets. And so like give everything a haircut, let your winners ride, and then like measure and improve your working dollars. Those are probably the best practice ones.
Oh, awesome. This idea of increasing working dollars is so interesting. I'm trying to think about myself, right? In the Enrollify budget, like, all right, well, if I was going to do this, where would I make some changes? I don't know, but great. All right. So we made it through 2 buckets. What's the third?
Okay, so the third, this is the juicy one. This is the congratulations, you made it to the end of the podcast, and you are getting the really, really good stuff that I'm not sure I've ever said publicly.
Oh man, this is what they pay you the big bucks for.
This is big. So if you want to drive more performance with less budget, the secret is not volume, it's velocity. And so hear me out. We all have bake times, right? Let's say that like the average inquiry to start rate is 90 days for a grad program. If you can make that 75 days, not only are you enrolling people faster, but at the end of your fiscal year, you're pulling 15 days of revenue forward. And so it's called a pull forward strategy, which is like, how do we compress our funnel, make the funnel work faster? Simplest ways to do that is to communicate faster, literally look at your cadence and tighten your cadence up. And so like, say if this was a 6-week email series, we're going to drop the same 6 weeks of worth of emails in 4 weeks. And we're going to figure out if we can get people to convert faster, keep them engaged sooner. You will increase your conversion rate oftentimes, but even if you don't, you increase the bake time, which pulls revenue forward. To give you an example of just how far this can go, I worked with an institution at one point that was an adult and online predominantly institution, and they had an academic calendar that was basically rolling 8-week classes, essentially, if that makes sense. And so what you ended up having is like every 8 weeks-ish, you would start new classes, but that doesn't work out perfectly because there's only room for basically 6 8-week terms in a calendar year, right? And so we end up having is 4 weeks down during the year, which is like Christmas, which is maybe 4th of July. And so they'd have breaks. We just removed the breaks. And we said that we were going to move to a rolling academic calendar, it's interesting. Your academic calendar does not need to actually be 52 weeks long, which is a wild fact. And so if you have weeks or times in your calendar, this works more with adult and online, but if you have times where you're not billing students, can you literally just eliminate that? And so we were able to pull forward 8% revenue increase on the same student population without spending any more money, just by reducing down weeks. And the best part was it actually improved retention because it kept students active in class without a break. And so at a minimum, understand the bake time of your funnel and shorten it. You will pull forward revenue. And in a perfect world, can you actually adjust your academic calendar at all to actually like eliminate down weeks? So like how many weeks a year is your institution making revenue? Those are way past marketing, but I have done both of those things, and both of those are huge benefits. I will note they are a one-time benefit. So if you compress your funnel from 90 days down to 75, you pull forward 15 days of revenue once, but then next year you're on that 75 days all the time. And so this is like a one trick up your sleeve chance, but if you've not pulled it, it's velocity, not volume. That's the real secret to doing more with less.
And one of the other points you made in this bucket is around communicating faster, being part of the solution. And when I think about, okay, so I'm sitting on a campus and I only have so many resources, and, you know, my staff isn't working 24 hours a day, and we get all these student inquiries. And actually, I mean, I was at RNL's conference last year and someone came up to our booth and they were like, it literally takes us 3 weeks to reply to a student inquiry. And they're like, and that is the fastest we can do it because of the volume of inquiries we get, right? So I'm putting myself in that person's shoes. Okay, I'm listening to this podcast and you just told me I have to communicate faster. Look, in my opinion, and no one's going to be surprised, I'm going to say this, I think, but this is where AI has a huge role to play. And so as I was thinking about this do more with less topic for our podcast today, I mean, like my mind immediately went to artificial intelligence. There's this cartoon where you've got a bunch of people like sweating hard and pushing this cart, and you'll notice the cart has square wheels. And in the cartoon, there's this person standing behind them, holding up a round wheel and being like, hey, you want to switch out your wheels? And everyone's response is, I don't have time for that. So obviously, like you see that cartoon and you're like, well, that's ridiculous. Spend 5 minutes switching out the wheels and you're going to move 100 times faster and you're not going to be sweating.
Totally.
That's AI for the record. Like spend 5 minutes to switch out your wheel and invest and start to build your AI ready campus. And every 5 minutes that you put into that, you get 100x on the other side. And so as I think about what might be at our listeners' fingertips that they can go use to have an impact on velocity today, my mind immediately goes to, generative AI and other tools.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And I think it's important to think about that even sometimes when I think about doing more with less, I'm thinking about doing more of what we've been doing the way that we've been doing it with less. So it's like very tinkering, but like there's an argument of like, okay, what are we doing and can we do that totally differently and better with less? And so like, I think that's really important because like, that's a bigger macro idea than I think I approach this question with sometimes. I'm sort of like, okay, how do I like eke out a percentage here and there? But like, you're totally right. Like there are also some big swing opportunities that could have a huge impact. And I think like AI, especially from like a workflow perspective, I think has a tremendous potential upside.
Yeah. Sometimes it's also worth just doing less too, right? I think
Yeah,
we can
totally. That's another great one. Just stop doing stuff.
right? And like to your point you made earlier, if you were to evaluate that 20% ad spend that's just not having the same impact, well, take that to the other things that you are doing in digital marketing or traditional marketing. If you and your budget were cut by, like 20% today, and it was for your entire Marcom operation, where would you make those tough decisions? And similarly, like that should point you in the direction. I know our social media managers and leaders feel this, I'm sure, all the time. A new tool sprouts up and somebody on the board is like, you got to be on, the next TikTok or whatever it is. But it's, it's just real. Like it's hard to stop doing things. I certainly feel that every single day.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're totally right. So I think that's maybe the best advice, right? Is that, how do you do more with less? I think the first thing is just like, don't immediately do anything. That like the best thing is like, let's slow down and like evaluate it and like, maybe take a breath, get a coffee or whatever your beverage of choice and like slow down and really think about it. Because I think, you could quickly get caught up in just replicating what you've been doing and maybe you shouldn't be doing stuff. Maybe you should be doing stuff totally differently. Maybe you should be tinkering and maybe all the above. And so like maybe like slow down to move fast. There's a military phrase about slow is smooth and smooth is fast. I was told by a colleague of mine at one of my last jobs. And that was like a really good reminder that like slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And so maybe don't move too fast, even if it feels like you've immediately run out of time to try to close that gap.
Well, Ken, I hope that we effectively addressed your question in today's podcast episode. Thank you so much for making the recommendation. This has been a really fun one. Now, folks, before you go, we have a brand new Pulse Check series dropping this week. It's called After Further Consideration. This is a DEI-focused series where our co-hosts, Dr. Cody Nielsen and Dr. Tamika Ferguson, are inviting experienced change leaders both within and beyond higher ed into conversations that are focused on responsive leadership, addressing campus crises, navigating institutional shifts, and fostering sustainable change. And they're doing that all through the lens of equity and inclusion. This is a 5-part series, and each episode is going to dive into the experiences of those who have navigated these challenges and the lessons that they have learned. I started this conversation with Cody, oh my goodness, I think last year, if I'm being honest. I feel like we've been talking about this series for so long. I've been so excited about it, and it is finally the week that it's going to drop. So I hope that you will all give it a listen. Let us know what you think. And until next time, they always go by so fast. I say it every week. Thank you so much, Seth. It's been great to catch up and see you. Listeners, thank you. We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye. The Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our show helps higher ed marketers and admission pros find their next big idea and features a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Brian Gross, Eddie Francis, Jenny Lee Fowler, and so many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.